Hello, this is Michael Wojcik with the Rochester City Council update for August 1st, 2016. Started out today with the Committee of the Whole meeting, and we only had one topic, and that was to talk about the Heritage Preservation Ordinance. And ahead of the meeting, I had submitted a total of about 4 pages of comments and rationales for changes I was looking to do. And basically what I was looking to do is put some hard guidelines in place for how we best balance the private property rights and the rights of the public to preserve parts of their history. And a lot of technical changes that I was involved in, but was particularly shocking and perhaps unsettling to me was the fact that I think of the 4 pages that I submitted, we ended up making every single one of those changes in one form or fashion or another. So I'm so not used to that happening that I'm not even quite sure how to handle it at this point. But the other thing I did throw out too is that I think we have an obligation to take a look at the city responsibilities for the areas where we're seeing a lot of development pressure, in particular in the downtown. And I think those properties that are going to be controversial at some point, the city just needs to buck up, do the study on those buildings, figure out which ones are historically important and structurally sound, so we can move beyond this and not have to deal with these issues at a time when it's perhaps more time sensitive. Moving on to the dinner meeting. Nothing happened. I attended. It's been a few months since I attended. Not a whole lot of discussion. I think one of the things we need to do at the dinner meeting is I'm going to ask staff provide a synopsis of topics to be discussed. In this case, I didn't get a chance to do it before the meeting, but in general, I'm not a big fan of the dinner meetings. Couldn't really care less one way or the other. Some of the old-timers in city government really like the dinner meetings, but I'd at least like the public to know what kind of topics we're discussing ahead of that event. Moving on to the evening meeting, fairly short, a little over 2 hours probably, and we talked quite a bit about the airport. The state legislature kind of left us hanging, and we don't have the state dollars that we were looking for to do the project, and but we did get some good bids, and we got some money from the federal government. And so we are going to move ahead with some of the terminal improvements. And at risk is we stand to lose about $1 million net if the state doesn't come through. So state officials, please come through. I don't know why in God's name, based on the success and the development around the other light rail lines, that some folks are making light rail in the Twin Cities the reason why they have to kill everything else. I wish they'd learn a little bit and get over it and see who's actually paying the taxes for the state and just let that one go so we can get our airport taken care of. Also discussed tonight, we are kicking off our license plate reader technology. I understand that on August 22nd there'll be a meeting to address how we're going to handle certain parking violations, because they're actually quite complicated. If it's on the public right-of-way, it's a law enforcement issue. If it's on private property, it's more of a zoning issue. But what we do know is a lot of folks in the core neighborhoods have basically leveled out their backyards, put down gravel, and they're basically running illegal commercial parking enterprises for people from outside of town. And once this LPR technology is in place and our ordinances are updated, it's going to be a very expensive day for some of those people. I expect them to get whacked pretty hard with fines for violating our ordinances and basically being disrespectful to the neighborhoods, turning them into commercial parking lots. Development is flying like crazy here in Rochester, and a couple more developments approved, and to my chagrin, we have a couple new cul-de-sacs coming in, and I always bring it up. We have a little bit of an issue with all these cul-de-sacs that we're building. There's more than 600 of them, and almost every single one, particularly in residential areas, they don't generate enough in property taxes along the cul-de-sac to cover the cost of services, let alone the enormous capital replacement costs of the cul-de-sac. And they're something that benefits entirely private entities for the most part. And so it's really kind of a frustration when we're as far in debt as we are, and we're going to be finding out relatively soon how far in debt the city is in terms of infrastructure and how we failed to plan. This only compounds the issue and makes it worse. I think there's enough people on the council that know exactly what I'm talking about and why it's true. And when we have that update, I expect there to be some pretty distressed people when they see how far in the hole poor planning and poor development strategies have truly left us. Moving ahead, I've been crunching some numbers on tax valuations and collections in the Uptown District. It looks absolutely fantastic. The extra 1.6, I believe, million that we invested in the Uptown area to make it really, really nice appears to be having a phenomenal payback in terms of increasing property values. And now the redevelopment is starting to happen too. The first project was essentially approved tonight, and that was the Uptown Apartments. There were some site constraints that maybe made it not as great as it could have been, and it's got a surface parking lot in front of it, which I'm never a big fan of. But in terms of how it's going to present itself to the district and to the frontage road, I think that's actually going to be quite nice. And given some constraints that they had, I thought they made a pretty good a pretty good level of improvement based on the recommendations. The one thing is that still has that surface parking lot in the front, so it is what it is. Next up, West 80. It's a proposed housing development kind of by US 63 and 48th Street Southwest. And it was something that staff had denied for a lot of really good reasons. Basically doesn't fit in with our plans right there. But when you actually dig in and you start looking about, well, wait a minute, this is the intersection of two major arterials on a spine going into downtown. Do we want transit-oriented development or don't we? Because if we want transit-oriented development, a mix of uses in this particular location would be great. But planning staff and the planning commissioners correctly noted that it violates our current comprehensive plan. So I got to once again raise the fact that that was written before I was born, and I'm very happy it's getting a refresh. But I do think we have to look hard about what we want this area to look like, and it appears it's going to be very well transit connected to the downtown, so maybe this is a good location for housing. I thought it was interesting that they brought up it's not close enough to services, it's not close enough to transit or other services, because frankly, this development is closer to transit and closer to other services from where I am sitting right now making this video in my home. So I think we have to focus on whether or not we really want to do this transit-oriented development, and frankly, we can't afford not to. We have got to get away from growth at all costs, and we have to talk about smart growth. Growth for the sake of growth, that's what cancer does. We need smart growth. We need to figure out how to build a city in a way that's financially, socially, and environmentally sustainable, and we're just not doing that today. And lastly, you know you weren't going to get out of this video without me talking about dark money. And cool down a little bit. Still very angry about this. It's very, very disappointing and very scary to see this happening in the community. And I'll remind you there were 5 names that were outed. Andy Schifolius, David Pedersen, John Beatty, John Wade, and Patrick Sexton. I had known for a long time what Patrick Sexton was up to. I think there's a lot of folks that were aware of it. I just didn't think they'd actually slip up to the point where the media would get a hold of something and actually be able to report on it. So I'm very grateful to the Med City Beat for exposing that and also exposing the other names. I mean, I have to confess that I'm not at all surprised to see David Pedersen's name on there. I'm not surprised to see John Wade's name on there. And obviously Patrick Sexton has been all about this for a long time. What surprised me, I was a little bit disappointed to see Andy Schifolius' name in there. I have a world of respect for his father, Gus Schifolius, who's really a steward of this community, cares deeply about this community. And I'm disappointed to see Andy going down this path. I'm also, John Beatty was, one of these Dunlap and Seeger guys, and I suspect we'll find out there's maybe some other names from Dunlap and Seeger involved too. We'll find out. I'm sure there's going to be more coming on this. But he was somebody who I thought was a little bit above some of the games that get played in this community. But in terms of why does this dark money matter, why does this PAC matter? Well, the example I give is let's think about the Holiday Inn proposal. Essentially, I don't know the value of acquisition, but I think the cost of the area that's now the parking lots was on the order of $5 or $6 million to acquire all of that land. Without doing anything to that land, essentially, the owners were going to turn around and sell it to another developer, the one who wanted to do the Holiday Inn, for about, on the order of $12 million or so. So just like that, it's $6 million in the pocket of a local investor. But in order to make the project work, that developer had to come back to the city and said, hey, I need about $6 million or else this project isn't going to pan out. So basically we're taking a $6 million subsidy and lining it in the pocket of a local investor. That's obscene. And I know the Post Bulletin went crazy with coverage about how the Holiday Inn failing was the end of the world. Actually, I think it was good, responsible government, and I think that project will come back in a better form. But the issue with that is Let's think about that. There was $6 million to be made, lining local investors' pockets. Uh, with a regular campaign contribution, there's campaign limits, and when you give more than $100, it's very public, so we can see who's supporting which candidates, or they're giving a relatively smaller amount of $100 or less. Not with the dark money PAC like what Wade and Sexton were looking to do. It is a potential that somebody like that could say, hey, I've got $6 million on the line here. I can throw $100,000 into this and try and influence a couple city council seats and get the votes I need to get a project like this passed. And you know what? Not only do you have no idea who's doing this, there's no accountability. Now they say in theory that it's they're supposed to be separated from the campaigns, but obviously with the names that were released, those names will be very quickly tied to a number of campaigns, I would suspect. But that's what's so scary about this. Unlimited money, completely anonymously, trying to overwhelm local government races. And for me, it's a little bit less of an issue because for better or for worse, I've been working my butt off for the community for about 8 years now. So at least I'm a known quantity. I have my strengths, I have my weaknesses, I have no delusions about what I am or what I'm not, but I am viciously honest. I act with integrity, I meet with people, talk with people, respond to people, and do my best for the greater good of the community, and that's because my special interests happen to be about ages 4 and 8. This dark money stuff can certainly influence my race, and I could be destroyed by this level of money very easily. But for the really scary thing is for a race when there's unknown quantities, when nobody's known and people don't necessarily have a brand or don't have name recognition in the public, that's where it gets really scary because one by one, this dark money can pick up seats and dominate local government. And I don't want to go back to the era of the Dirty Dozen that they talk about in the 60s and 70s, where a few people controlled the Rochester City Council with puppet strings. We have too many bad legacies from that era that still haunt this community to this day. So I would encourage everybody to do what you can to take action, continue to expose dark money. I hope the press continues to investigate connections, these names, figure out some more details on the PAC. The one thing these PACs can't be doing is principally being used to manipulate council races, and that's one of the things that's kind of interesting. The quote that I guess was written, I think it was written by Andy Schafolius, implied that was the principal reason this was being set up. So there's going to be a lot of gray areas on this, but I do appreciate all the support, all the people that are looking into this. This is the kind of dirty stuff that doesn't belong in the city of Rochester, and I'm going to continue to act with integrity. I'm going to continue to fight it, and I'm going to continue to expose it. Thank you so much for watching. Looks like it's going to be a fun year.